Your book that we're going to talk about today, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, this is substantial. Like, it just feels good in your hand.
It's you know, when I first started, I was like, this might be too much book for me.
We got you a drink.
Thanks, you. I need one
to have this conversation.
Yeah. Cheers.
Good. What do you think of the library?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's incredible. Like, there's so much here. And I remember she called me one day and she goes, this is the third time you've missed your session. Why don't you want to be better? The next thing I know, I'm just bawling.
This happened before?
No, never. And I was like, it's time. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take. It's time to start crawling out of this.
We love talking about books that have changed people's lives, like had such an impact that they are different after reading the book. And our special guest today is Jeromy Robert. So how did The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand change your life?
So, hey, Chris.
Welcome, Jeromy.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Good. What do you think of the library?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's incredible. Like, there's so much here. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
I kind of live by the premise that whoever has the most books when they die goes to heaven.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go to heaven.
I
think a lot of people are not.
Yeah. I feel that.
The whole, Kindle download thing. You're not going to heaven with that.
It takes away the soul of it for sure, and the quietness of it.
Yeah, so your book that we're going to talk about today, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, this is substantial. Like, it just feels good in your hand.
It's so, even the like the little paperback that I read from was so substantial that it was, when I first started, I was like, might be too much book for me. Might be too much, but it was such a good read. It was just incredible. The
thing too I really like about this one is just the way these pages feel.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something to the paper. It's like a little waxy kind of.
Yeah. Well, the fact that it's, written in the 30s was just, it gives you a sense of history, but it's also, she could have written it today. And it still is so much, like, just applies. Yeah, this is great. I would have loved to see, is this one of her, like, the original ones?
No. But whenever we buy a book, we just try to get the hardcover.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. I like the new
Her stuff is very collectible, though.
Is it?
The first pressings, oh yeah.
Really. So good.
So you have a pretty diverse background.
A little bit, yeah. I've been around.
Yeah.
I've taken some trips and done some stuff. And yeah.
I was kind of thinking, like, if you would have been the kid that went to law school and paid for that and then pivoted a bunch of different ways, it's hard when you're young to just decide what you're going to do with your life.
It really is. It really is hard, especially I feel like when you are lost at a young age, if you have, like, turmoil in your life at a young age, you don't really have the guidance to go, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go in that direction and that direction. You just kind of get out there and figure it out. So
yeah, oftentimes you don't really have a model to follow.
Yeah, or the models you do have are not great. And so you go, am I supposed to be doing this, or am I not supposed to be doing, like, how is that supposed to work?
Did you have a sense of that early on? Like, I remember being young, like 10, and just having the conscious thought of, okay, the adults say to do it this way, but they're miserable.
Yeah, almost exactly that. I grew up in a household that was very both religious, like beyond ultra religious, and very violent. And you just kind of question that whole thing as you go along and go, this you're not treating these other people right. You're not treating me right. Like, but you, as a child, you're still trying to please those people, So it's a very confusing thing trying to find a balance or trying to find, like, a direction hey, who are my role models? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? So,
do you remember being conscious of the discrepancy?
At a pretty young age, I remember it maybe 8 or 10, just going, this doesn't feel right, like somebody yelling at somebody in public, and just going, oh gosh, that doesn't, let me go over here. That doesn't feel right to me, and then, as things progressed through childhood, I just was very much like, wow, that doesn't feel right. I need to not be, around this as quickly as possible.
Yeah. What was the religion?
Christianity, Baptist based, but I think they were just, whatever they were being taught they just went all in, I think the parents did a lot of drugs when they were young, and then replaced that with religion. It's what I've come up with as an answer. Who knows if that's true, but it just, how some people take something to the 12th degree, right? And then they stop that and they pick up something else and take it to the 12th degree. It's like a personality thing. So I think that's what they did. And, it was just, didn't feel right in any way, shape, or form. So
mine was very similar. So I wasn't allowed to watch TV, listen to secular music, go to the movies, any of that.
That's very familiar.
That was kind of another discrepancy for me, was the idea that sort of stuff would have that much control, and just the idea that you couldn't talk about certain things too. Like, why would we be afraid to talk about it if we knew what the truth was?
Right. And if the truth would help you, become a better person, or like sex.
Or understand.
Oh,
sex was like so confusing.
Just don't talk about it. Don't look at it. Don't, and I think as young men, you're like, oh, well, that's exactly what I'm going to gravitate towards.
Well, we want it.
Yeah.
We're programmed to want it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, very confusing.
Yeah.
And very shameful. There's a lot of shame with it.
So much guilt in that. So, I don't know if you felt that at a very young age, but nothing but guilt. And trying to find your way out of that.
And just to the idea that I was supposed to wait to have sex till I was married.
Yep.
But all of the people that I witnessed wait to have sex till they were married ended up divorced pretty quickly. Yeah. Or they were everybody was cheating. Like, seems like there's more cheating going on in the church than anywhere else. But they're saying one thing. Yeah. And if you just watch, you're like, none of these match up. Like what we're saying and what we're doing. And it I remember thinking as a kid, like, why don't we reset? Like, why don't we just stop for a minute?
Yeah.
And reset, because it's just chaos.
Yeah.
Like, it's total chaos.
And kind of think about what you're doing before you guys do it, because you're making an impression on us as we're going along.
I don't think we were even in the consideration.
Yeah.
I didn't feel
I agree with that.
I was a passenger.
Yeah.
Even to the point of talking about it now with my parents, like, I was a passenger.
Yeah.
They cared about me and they loved me, but I wasn't, my dad left, my real dad left when I was 2 months old.
Oh, wow.
So just, I don't know how old you are, but I was the first generation where the parents prioritized themselves over the kids. Before me, they would stay together for the kids.
No matter what.
It was out.
Yeah.
1972, that was over.
Right.
And so they get in a little fight and the kid is irrelevant. Like, you had this thing, but the raising of this thing is not the priority.
Right.
We're the priority.
Yeah. It was very much that.
Those hippies.
Yep. Keep quiet. You're going to do what we tell you to do. We're going to, give you the backhand if we need to. And I feel like I raised myself through a lot of that, because they were just non-existent. And when they were, it was not fun. So because they were about themselves, trying to figure out what they were doing.
So did your parents stay together?
They stayed together. I think they're still together. I have no idea. It's been 24 years since I've had any sort of conversation with them. So
Really?
yeah. It was not a good childhood at all. And it's funny because my father preached, you will be in the Navy, you will do X. And that's all I knew. Like I felt brainwashed, right?
So you were raised to go into the Navy?
To go into the military, do a specific thing. That is it. And even when at a young age, like I moved out when I was 15, I still had that in my head that that's all I was going to do forever.
Isn't that crazy?
And it actually was great for me. It didn't go as I was told it was going to go, but it was amazing for me because it took me out of that environment and sent me out into the world. And as we know, like traveling the earth is the greatest education. You get more people, more books, more everything, So it was, although it was meant for something else, like control, I think, it was the greatest thing that had happened to me because I was just away and I wasn't a part of it. And it took me a lot of years of trying to prove and trying to call and, hey, I did this and I did that, and they were the same, but I was changing, which was great. So, but yeah, it was.
So what did your parents do?
My dad worked at a sawmill that his father worked at and, was kind of an engineer, sort of.
Did he go in the military?
He was in the military. Grandfather was in the military. My dad was in the military and went through jump school, parachute school with a bunch of Navy SEALs. And he's like, if you're going to be anything in this life, that's what you're going to be. That's what I was going to be, without question. So never quite made it.
So what happens at 15 that you leave?
There was some pretty rough stuff, like really, really rough things that had happened between my father, my sister. My parents were talking about it, getting divorced. This was pretty young. So that kind of went on for many years of, families apart. The family was apart, and then they were back together, then they were apart again. And around 15, this whole thing kind of continued a little bit with dad and sister. And
so would dad abuse mom and then mom would leave?
Dad abused my sister. And my mom sort of defended him. He went to prison for it. He went to a mental institution for it.
And this is when you were that age?
This was a little bit younger when it started. I think I was in second grade.
So you're in second grade when dad goes to prison?
Yeah. No, I was in fourth grade.
We got you a drink.
Thanks, you. I need one
to have this conversation.
Yeah. Cheers.
They take these pretty serious, so let's see what you think. I know they were debating what to make you because you just said
magic
bourbon, right?
Thank you, guys. That's magic. Yeah, that's great. I think the whole thing started at second grade.
Were you aware any of this is going on?
Not at all. Not at all. My first awareness was my mother woke me up in the middle of the night. This is second grade. Put me in a car in the middle of the night. And I just went back to sleep. And I woke up at my grandmother's house, which was a 4-hour drive away. She put me in school, and I loved my father. He was my idol at this point because I was, a little kid. By the time we came back to our hometown was maybe a year later. And it was just, the family, no one said a word to me about anything the whole time. It wasn't until fourth grade, so a couple years later, that they were like, oh, he's going to this hospital, right, to get better.
Wait, so are you asking where he is at any point?
Yeah.
And what do they say?
Nothing.
They don't answer you?
They just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And he was there for a little bit, but they were separated. So I'd go see him and then I'd stay at home, and I just wasn't, but I was one of those kids, probably like you, where I would sit back and kind of listen in the other room and learn and kind of listen to what my mom was saying to other people, because she had a lot of church friends that would come by, right? So I learned a little bit just kind of sitting quietly in the other room, which is how I know most of the story, because they've never sat down and said one word about it to this day.
Was your sister older or younger?
Older, 2 years older.
2 years older?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they say he's going away to a hospital?
He's going away to a hospital.
And that's jail?
Well, he spent a year in a mental institution and then a year in some sort of prison. And we went to visit him one time. Scariest thing I ever did as a little kid.
Because it's like a funny farm?
It's just like one of those, it's like a movie, right? Where you go and it's this scary old building, and it was
People
just
are screaming and
terrifying, right? And they sat me down and said, hey, you're going to see your dad. There's going to be other guys there. Don't speak to them. I'm what, 8, 9? Okay. And then you go to this scary building and you're like, what's actually happening? And all I knew was I missed my dad at that time, because I didn't really comprehend or understand. Even though I was listening, I didn't understand what was happening. Had no clue of what was happening. So it was terrifying, to kind of be in that environment and kind of piece together things, but not really know. And at a young age, not really comprehend, what was happening. So
what's going on in your life at that point in school? Like, how are you relating to other kids? Are other kids aware of any of it?
So we grew up in a really small town. The town that I grew up in Oregon, a little town called Oak Ridge, there was only 2,500 people in the whole town. A large majority of them were my family, right? My great-grandfather had started the town as a logging community. So everybody knew everybody, and everybody knew everybody's business. So pretty much every adult knew everything more than I did. And kids were just kind of oblivious, as we are as kids, But we went to this little tiny private school at the church, and I think we were kind of kept away from a lot of stuff because there was only like 30 kids at the school, and it affected me. I look back on it now. I didn't know then, but it affected me in ways like I just was like, I'm not doing homework. I'm not going to do it. And so they would punish me in various ways, but I was just like, I don't care. I'm not going to do it, and that would go on for months at a time, because I was just, I think, frustrated or didn't understand what was happening or, so.
Did you have a hard time concentrating?
Quite a bit. Because I think you were trying to piece together why, right? Why is the one person that I love the most not there? Why is this happening? Why is now mom being ultra mean, So, and it was just this weird shift that then just became everything was ugly. Everything was mean. Everything was hard all the time.
So you were processing that?
Yeah.
Did you daydream a lot?
Oh yeah, tons.
I used to daydream and doodle.
I used to draw a lot.
Like I was irrelevant to what was going on in the class. I would get in trouble a lot for not doing my work, but I couldn't concentrate if they wanted me to. Yeah. Like it just was of no interest to me whatsoever. Yeah. How is your relationship with your sister at this point? Like is she okay at this point, or is she?
I think as okay as anyone can be that's been through,
something like
that. We talked for quite a while throughout the years, and you know, she said to me one year, me should reach out to the parents and ask for their forgiveness.
To your parents?
Yeah, I should ask for their forgiveness.
Forgiveness for what?
It rocked me because I was like, what? Like, you've got to be joking. Do you understand what our childhood was? You know? So I think since then it's been very much like, hey, I hope you're good. Merry Christmas. And that's it.
What do you think was going on in her mind?
I think we as humans are really good about lying to ourselves, about making things okay. So you can actually have a relationship with somebody, you know, the dysfunctional family. She's friends with my parents. I think they have a farm or a ranch or something. She lives there with them. She's had 2 sons. Those 2 sons have kids now. The kids grew up around my parents. And I'm just like, wow. After what we went through, you're allowing your kid, you know, so.
Did you ever talk to her about how she reconciled that?
Nope.
No?
No, I never. Just that one time when she was like, you need to do that. And I was like, nope. Like, it doesn't work that way. It needs to go the other way. And
yeah, the math doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. And and for the years and years and years of, when I decided to kind of like, hey, I've had enough, you really have a lot of like turmoil about it. Like, hey, how am I, it's that guilt again. And you fight through it. And then after a while, you kind of come to a place where you're like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I know that I haven't done anything.
Yeah, like you feel like you're standing up for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a moment, because I think, did you read a lot of fantasy books in high school?
To be honest, I didn't. The first book I read, I was in my early 20s, and it was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I couldn't concentrate to read books.
Yeah.
Now when I look back, it makes sense, but then I felt like I was odd. Like all these other kids were so good at reading and retaining, and I just was, I was too confused.
All over the place.
There was too much noise in my head.
Yeah, I hear that.
So no. But I mean, one of the first movies I saw was Return of the Jedi. And so I was into that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Just kind of escaping your stuff.
I would just daydream.
Yeah.
I would daydream like crazy. I would talk to myself. I was an only kid.
Okay.
So I would talk to myself. I would create worlds.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
In my bedroom, like little cities, and build stuff. And
that's very cool.
I was alone a lot. So I grew up until I was 13. I grew up in Mexico. So my parents were missionaries. My mom and my stepdad.
Wow.
That was even more isolating. I'm an only child, but I'm the only white kid.
Right.
For miles.
Yeah. Did you speak Spanish, and did you have friends?
Yeah, I had friends, but I never fit in.
Yeah.
The thing about Mexico and that is the gap in poverty is so big.
Yeah.
That it was just interesting because in Mexico I was the wealthy kid, even though we were dirt poor.
Yeah, yeah.
But then in America I was the kid wearing the donated clothes. In Mexico the donated clothes were couture.
Right.
Because I had clothes.
Love that stuff.
Yeah.
You have different changes of clothes. You're good.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's interesting. The other thing that I realized very young is these youth groups would come down, and the kids that I would play with were my friends in Mexico that literally lived in cardboard shacks, houses made out of crates and cardboard that, you could throw a cat through the wall,
right?
Kind of a thing. Were happier than these kids that had the life I wanted in America, because I just wanted to be an American.
Right.
I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to belong. Those kids were entitled and miserable And the kids in Mexico would give anything to be Americans.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes people would lose their lives trying to cross the border. And so that interest in human behavior and psychology, I think, came very young for me because I could see the different behaviors and the different outcomes. And I think that's one thing that I notice about the way I think versus most people is I tend to look at the outcome first.
Yeah.
Where most people look at the belonging and how it makes them feel.
Right.
And I'm always like, well, that's deceiving because of my upbringing with religion and all that. I'm like, that's ideology.
Exactly.
You're actually headed to a wall going 50 miles an hour.
Right.
I'd rather look over here than the consensus. And so I've always had a distrust for authority.
Yep.
And, always kind of the quiet kid, like you said. I'm watching, but I'm always the quiet one in the back of the room. I'm not super opinionated.
Yeah.
Even in politics or anything. Like I don't feel like people say don't talk religion or politics, and I'm always like, why? You could change my mind.
Yeah.
Like if you really know something I don't know, I want like, oh, you don't. You're just following everybody else.
You're just following all the sheep,
Yeah,
right?
okay. We're just, this thing comes with all of this and we throw it in.
Yeah.
Because even politically, like I'm very diverse and, I love capitalism.
Yeah.
And I like law and order, but I also don't think we should be telling people what to do. And freedom is freedom.
Right.
And so I'm encroaching your freedom if I'm telling you what to do, as long as you're not hurting somebody.
Right.
And that unfortunately doesn't work.
Yeah.
You got to be that or you got to be this.
Yeah. Because I think people can't handle having their own thoughts. They just don't they don't want their own thoughts. They want to be led and they want to be told what to do. And they just want to be like, okay,
We've been talking about that a lot lately, that people just want permission.
They just,
They want you to tell them it's okay and then do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a scary thing because there are people out there that will tell them, they'll spin up a good story.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But all it does is make you hate somebody that you're more like than different, Yeah, just think about the Cold War and how we were taught to hate Russians.
Yeah.
But they want families and they have kids and they just want to
eat and go to school.
We're way more similar than we are different.
Yeah.
But we got to hate them.
We've always needed an enemy, right?
Yeah.
We always need an enemy.
Well, what's the saying? If there's one lawyer in town, he's broke. If there's two, they're rich.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that enemy to go after, right, then how am I going to lead this group of people into something, right, and get them to do what I want them to do? Because there's those handful of people that just want the power, right, for no reason, whatever reason, So, but you can't not have an enemy, whether it's ISIS or, Afghanistan or whoever, or, black versus white or Hispanic versus, it just, you have to, people need that to exist in whatever world they're.
Have you ever studied any of the Rene Girard stuff?
Mm-mm.
There's a great new documentary actually, and I'll show it to you before you leave. He was at Stanford. Peter Thiel is the first person I ever heard talk about him. Are you familiar with Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel is, he's kind of one of the guys that got Trump elected, but he was the Republican that he's gay. Mm-hmm. That gave the speech at the convention the first time Trump got elected.
Oh, yeah,
He's one of the founders of Palantir, original investor in Facebook. He's PayPal Mafia with Elon.
Yep. So
he's part of that. But Palantir kind of runs stuff.
Right.
And the stock has been great if you've invested in it. But at Stanford, he took one of Rene's classes and then ended up kind of, applying a lot of it. But Rene's thing was that we're very mimetic. Like everything we do is a copy of a copy.
Right.
And even to the degree that when you have an enemy, you're copying. And how wars start is copying, because you have nuclear weapons. Now we need you have bigger ships. We need bigger ships. You did this. Now we got to do something bigger.
Right.
And it's just copying.
Yeah.
And that the true nature of a leader, in a sense, or, you know, making the world a better place, is to not be mimetic and to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
And to do something different than that. You know, if I push you, you push me back. You know, don't react to things trying to find solutions, and in a sense, you know, sacrifice is the key. But it's fascinating, because that really is how we are. Like, it's pretty easy to create an enemy and get the enemy to react, and then you can start an economy. Like,
yeah. And it's hard to argue against somebody that just kind of doesn't return the argument or just walks away. You're like, wait, where are you going? Well, I'm not going to argue with you. So,
or just somebody that shows kindness.
Yeah.
Like, there's you know, the people that are the most outspoken or the, you know, the most aggressive usually are the ones that need the hug the most. But that is not how we approach it.
It's really not. It's really not. Because
and I was that kid once.
Yeah. Well, we've all been that, right? We've all been that, I feel like. Because you don't know any better until you get to a certain place, or you've, you know, listened to others who are like, you know, let's do it this way instead of the old way, you know?
Okay, so let's go back to 15.
Okay.
So you're 15.
Yeah.
Is dad out of jail?
So dad's out of jail at that point. Parents move back in together. Something, I don't know what, happens again involving the sister. Sister moves to New York to be a nanny. I'm upset at this point because I kind of sort of have an idea, but I haven't really, nobody's ever been told.
So she's 17, 18?
She's 17, 18, quits school, goes to New York, and is just gone, right? Getting out of there, which good for her. I was like, good job. But I was just furious because I was like, after our whole life of being in disruption because of you two, right? Because of my dad and, you know, and just the nonsense of it, you know, and the violence of it. I got in trouble for something. The belt came out, you know, it was wild. I was like, that's it. I literally, the next day, nothing in my hands, walked out of the house and went to a friend's house and was like, I'm not going back, period. And it was a scary choice, and it was a tough choice, but I ended up living with some friends. I ended up, you know, finishing high school that way, just like living with some different friends and having to deal with, you know, because I was not an adult yet, a lot of my, you know, when your parents have to sign off on stuff, a lot of those privileges were taken away. Sports, driving, right? Because we have such a small town, our DMV was one person. Mom went to the DMV and said, my signature is not on this anymore. So I couldn't drive. Tons of little things like that.
Did you start working right away?
Yeah. I was working in a grocery store at 13. Through that, I had my own like lawn mowing business, which was pretty aggressive. You know, I did, you know, I was making a few $100s a month in, you know, the 80s, which for a kid, that's great, right? So, yeah. So I put myself through the rest of high school, like the last like year and a half, 2 years of high school, and junior year of school, I signed up to go in the Navy because I was always going to do that. And then went through my senior year, and 10 days after graduation, I was gone. And I was like, hope I never come back.
Did you end up seeing your parents at like the grocery store in different places?
I didn't really see them that much. I didn't really see them at all. I kind of knew where they could be or were going to be. And if I ever kind of spotted them, I'd go the other way. They didn't really seek me out at all. There was a time that I went back for like a couple of weeks, and then I was like, no, this is not, I'm gone again. So I went back with some friends, and I did make the point of the day before I left and got on a plane to go to boot camp, I went back to, say goodbye. Because I was still had that in me about they're still my parents, and I still have to, the
course.
Bible teaches respect your parents. And, I still had that in me. And I remember my dad coming out of the house and, talking to me for a couple minutes, but my mother refused. She wouldn't come out at all.
So mom saw it more as a betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah. And
isn't that interesting that the adult who programmed you, in a sense, right? Like she's in charge of the programming
of everything
for a long time.
Yeah.
And then she programmed you to be the way you are. And then she's bitter about it.
Super bitter. And when I was in the Navy, I would call them, hey, I won this award, or I did this thing, or I got, I was the top of my class in cryptology school, which was hard to do. And I'd call them. And if I got my mom, it was, who's this? Oh, yeah, let me get your dad. That was it for years and years and years. And I'm like, what could I have possibly done? And it took me years to figure it out. What could I have possibly done to make these people upset with me? I didn't do anything. I was a great kid, got good grades, didn't drink in high school, didn't do drugs. I didn't do anything. And I think I came to the conclusion that I look a lot like my dad, like a lot. And I think that if you lie to yourself and make it okay for this person, you got to take that anger and blame and put it somewhere else because it's there. And I think that the image of this person is what she put it on. And who knows if that's accurate or true. It's just kind of what I came up with.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's logical.
Because she is still with a person that did all this stuff, but she had to make it okay to be with them, right? Whether religion says that's what you're supposed to do or whatever. But that's the only answer I could come up with.
Do you think that in the military you develop self-esteem?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
What else was the outcome of that?
A lot of it was, hey, you now are on your own. You're the adult. You can go seek answers. And, started drinking. Obviously, you're in the Navy. So there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of just, trying to find answers, still angry about childhood, trying to have accomplishments in the Navy. And I had quite a few, and that wasn't good enough. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing all these things that you guys wanted me to do, and it's still not good enough. So partying, hanging out with friends, drinking a lot, it just went crazy. Spent 8 years in the Navy, just, we were always drunk.
Did you ever try to be a SEAL?
I tried vaguely and applied for it, never got in because of, you have to be in a certain job to then go and apply for that. Because I was the top of my class, they sent me to cryptology school. And cryptology's like being a cryptologist, it's not what they call a rating for being in the SEALs. And then I was the top of my class in cryptology school. So they're like, you're not going anywhere, buddy, because we need more people like this to, so And after a while, I was fine with it because I had met some Navy SEALs and I was friends with some of them. And I was like, these guys are actually crazy. Like doing just the craziest shit ever. And that's too much, like just too much. And some of them would never come back, So.
Yeah. And they're killing people.
And
like,
they're, and at the time, I think I was like, yeah, I'm going to blow up,
bad guys.
Bad guys. And anger, because of this. And I'm glad it never went that direction because I'm like, okay, I'm moderately sane now. Yeah. But some of those guys were
they carry a burden sometimes.
Huge, many burdens.
I'm glad they're out there.
I admire them to this day. I had many that were friends of mine that I thought were very cool, but yeah, I'm glad it wasn't me. I've come to realize that I'm quite a bit more sensitive, and like I don't think I would have done well with the aftermath of having done that. So Navy was really good for me. Not doing that was really good for me too, so.
So then what makes you leave the Navy and not re-enlist?
So I was in Hawaii, doing really good, planning on doing the 20 years, had a great life, had a girlfriend, my own place, the whole thing. And they sent me to East Timor. This was 98, I think. And East Timor had seceded from Indonesia. So a bunch of rebels or somebody came through and just massacred everybody on the island. So they sent the UN and the military out there. So I got to go. And that was the first time I had, in uniform, walking through, just seeing dead bodies. I was like, oh, okay, this is really unpleasant, And I had been doing photography for a really long time. So I'd taken my camera and was taking photos, and it was just a lot. It was a lot. But we were stationed in Australia for that. And so while in Australia, you'd only go over to East Timor a little bit, right? One day and come back. A couple weeks later, you go for a day and you come back. And while I was in Australia, they had me working at night and basically, just kind of working so we're on the same time frames as the US and whatnot. So during the day, I had my free time. And I would meet some of the Australians that were we were in Darwin, and I would meet them, and I was like, oh, these people are cool, So I got to hang out with them. And one night they were like, hey, your next night off, you should come hang out with us at this club. And so I went to hang out with them. They gave me some ecstasy, which I had no idea what it was. And some of my friends, they're like, just be careful. And then it just blew my mind out of the water. And I was like, this is the craziest, coolest thing ever. So as I finished this kind of temporary duty, and my attitude had changed.
Wait. So where are you when you do the ecstasy?
So I'm in Australia.
Yeah, but where? In a club?
In a nightclub.
And somebody hands it to you?
No, well, so the group of friends that I had met, like while we were just hanging out during the day, like I would hang out at a bookstore and just read books, and because I had nothing to do because then I went to work at night. So they took me out the one weekend night that I had off and gave it to me, and I was like, and I was still kind of this angry person all the way up until this point. And given it to me, I was like, this is crazy.
So how long does it take to hit? I've never done ecstasy, so.
It's crazy.
Does it hit right away? Does it take a while?
No, it takes, because it's a pill, right? And you take it and it's 20 minutes.
And then you start to feel all lovey-dovey?
All just.
Everything is love. Everything's connected.
Well, it's not just love. Like your skin feels good. Everything feels good. The lights are amazing.
And you've never felt like this before?
Ever. ever. And I was like, how is this possible? You know?
Are they on it too?
Yeah, everybody's on it. Everybody's on it. And it was such a life-changing experience that I remember before I had left Australia to go back to Hawaii, which was maybe a month later, I think I had a really bad attitude coming up to this point, right? I was kind of getting to that point where I was being disrespectful to the upper, and I was just angry and just continuing to be just this angry person. And then after the experience, the chaplain came up to me because, he's checking in on everybody. And he's like, your attitude has changed completely.
Like your energy's different.
Your energy's different, everything. Because I'm just like, life is unbelievable. And he's like, what is it? And of course, in the 90s, you're not doing drugs and telling anybody about it when you're in the military. And so I was like, I met some people. And
found Jesus.
I not quite that far. But I was like, I met some people. They gave me some perspective. Everything's good. He's like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble now. Never got in trouble for it. But before I left, we went out several times, and I'm
You did it again?
Several times. And I was just like, this is amazing.
So what do you think it is that it's rewiring in your brain that it changes your outlook?
Just light. You don't have to worry about the past. You don't have to worry about stuff. Like life
puts you in the moment.
Yeah, you feel great. Life can be good, and it can be what you make of it. And and I'm sure I didn't quite understand it at the time. So I went back to Hawaii with the intention of getting out of the military and going back to Australia, because it was just this wonderland of happiness and love, and everybody was kind, and drugs were amazing. And while I was there, before I'd left, I'd gone to Sydney for a week of vacation and then back to Hawaii. Well, I met some photographers and I was really into photography. I'd met some photographers who were shooting at the 2000 Olympics, which was about to happen. And they're like, dude, come back, hang out with us. We'll shoot the Olympics together. And I was like, this is unbelievable. So I went back, broke up with my girlfriend, got rid of my apartment, got rid of everything I owned, except for a bag of cameras and a bag of clothes, and went back.
Why'd you break up with the girlfriend?
I just was like, you're not it. This is not it.
Did you change too much?
I just was like, I think I was chasing the happiness of it, partially the drugs of it, but the life-changing, because I was happy for the first time. I wasn't angry at the entire world. I wasn't ready to fight. I was always like, So went back, got to hang out with the women's Australian soccer team, followed them around, photographed them, met 1 million people, did tons of drugs, just too much, and yeah, spent a year there just rewiring my brain. And it was pretty incredible. It was pretty incredible. It was also a little, I think, devastating as it went along, because I got to the point where I was like losing weight, massive amounts of weight.
Because you were doing too many drugs?
Too many drugs.
What other
too much
drugs were you doing?
partying. Not really anything. I'm sure there was some cocaine in there and stuff.
Can you drink? Another thing I've never tried. Can you drink when you're doing ecstasy?
Mm-hmm.
You can? Alcohol?
You don't want to.
Oh.
You don't want to. You drink a lot of water and a lot of Red Bull. But it definitely has an effect on your body, especially if you're doing partying too much, dancing, sweating, the whole thing. So
so it's kind of coming to an end,
yeah,
but you're different, and you still have a better perspective on life.
It gave me a much better perspective in the beginning, but then it became about just partying and about seeking this otherworldly happiness and not worrying about the past.
And are you making your living in photography?
In photography, I got a job at the Olympics, and then after the Olympics, I got a job at a studio, like a portrait studio, and had saved up some money. So I was doing great while I was in Australia. Decided after Australia to come back to San Francisco, go to an art school to do photography for real. And San Francisco was rough. School was good, but like the drugs got a hold, and it was.
Was it another level of drugs?
It was everything at that point. It was just like
debauchery,
and
San Francisco's good for that.
Yeah. Bartending as a job, trying to do photography, but not really understanding how to do the business of photography, and going.
Just out of curiosity, so I can understand you a little more.
Yeah.
Preferred camera.
It's funny that you should ask that.
You can learn a lot about somebody by their favorite camera.
I was a Canon guy, and I always thought, of course, everybody likes a Hasselblad or a Leica, right? But nobody can afford those. I was always under the impression that whatever your father used is what you kind of used. So my dad had a Canon, so I had a Canon. And as I, went through school and all that stuff, like that's what I used, and then went into digital, and Canon did better in digital than Nikon did. So I was like, oh, at least I got lucky on that side. But I was a big Canon guy. But then I started collecting old cameras and trying to experiment with like old camera, fixing them so they could actually take, good film and stuff. So I used a ton of different stuff.
What do you have now?
I just bought a Nikon F1, like an old pristine film camera that, because the old Nikons were really great. But I've got Canons, I've got Fujis. Like I travel with my Fuji because it's small. I've got just a ton of like different cameras that I love using, film and digital, and all of it. So
I see a lot of photographers now going back to film for like a year.
Yeah,
because it just makes you have to plan a little more.
You do.
It's not so careless.
I feel like you definitely have to be more
intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an art to that.
Yeah. And you don't.
It is funny, like when I have photo sessions, like there's kind of two types of photographers. There's the one that takes 1 million pictures.
Yeah.
And then there's one that takes 20.
Yeah.
And like
you plan it out.
20 are good.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's hard to go through the million.
Yeah.
And pick.
It's so hard. When I moved to LA, I just did photography for a good, 15 years. And, I got to work with people like Michael Greco, Leibowitz, David LaChapelle for a little bit,
What's he shoot with?
He shoots with the Hasselblads, or at least when I knew him, he shot with Hasselblads.
Why didn't you ever get a Hasselblad?
It's too expensive at
the
time.
Mean, though?
I could just
you
never
figure it out.
Yeah, I could have, but I just
too grandiose.
No, I loved the old ones. I didn't. I mean, because like when I was working with Greco for a really long time, that's all we used is the Hasselblad, right? So I had access to it, and I just was it.
What did you think about the photography books?
I loved it. I wandered around. You have Mary Ellen Mark. You have all her books up there.
Oh yeah, a lot of those are signed.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So good.
Do you go to Arcana here, the bookstore? So Lee, who owns Arcana, helped me kind of curate that. But he got her to sign a lot of stuff. So she used to wear bracelets, and if you look at a couple of them, there's marks from her bracelets when she's signing.
Way.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I love that bookstore. It's my favorite bookstore.
Yeah. It's so great. Like I have stacks and stacks of photography books that I'm just like, I'll go through them, even the older ones. And I loved working with photographers, like all of them. I worked with these two French photographers that were fairly famous fashion photographers, and I bought all their books, and I would take them to set and be like, hey, sign these. And I just was fascinated watching them work,
Who's your favorite fashion photographer?
Oh, that's good. It's tough. There's so many, Helmut Newton is the number one for me. Avedon is a pretty close second, but Newton was always something that inspired me. When his sumo came out, I was just like, I had a friend who had one, and I'm like, this is amazing, So
Yeah.
he was.
Mine would be, and I always struggle with the pronunciation, but it's Guy Bourdin.
Oh yeah.
He's my favorite by far.
Yeah, he's amazing.
We have a bunch of his in there. I think I almost have all of them. I even have the New York Times lingerie insert.
Really?
I'd love to get something of his that's like original, like a print, but he didn't really do a lot of that.
Yeah.
He kind of was more about the work.
Yeah. I feel like nowadays you can reach out to their estates and get negatives or get them to print from a negative that they've got. So I've been kind of seeing some of that lately.
Maybe I'll try that.
Yeah.
His stuff just blows my mind. The stuff he does with mannequins and stuff is nuts. But there's a super sexy picture of this girl on a bridge like this with a Polaroid of herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Oh, I know the picture.
It's like how he came up with that in the moment. I heard an interview with her and she was like, yeah, he just took a Polaroid and then he goes he saw it all in his head.
Yeah, he's got one where it's just a woman's legs coming out from underneath the bed, and like there's a pool of blood or color or something. I'd love that.
The one too of the mannequin legs going up the stair.
Yep.
Kind of like to a landing on a concrete stairwell or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. The girl's being chased too. Mm-hmm. And that wallpaper.
Yep.
Yeah. People are like, what are you guys talking about? But,
but it's
so fun.
Genius. Like just coming up with simple stuff that you're like, oh, that was so simple, but they came up with it. And it just...
Well, and it transcends... It's art, because it transcends whatever the job Vogue sent them to do.
Right.
It's way bigger than that.
Yeah. And it transcends time, too.
Yeah.
Like, had you shot that today, just as relevant. So...
And sometimes for me, what is fun is, the fact that it's in a fashion magazine almost diminishes how high art it is.
Yeah.
And people don't get that. Yeah. That is the tip of the spear when it comes to photography at certain points in time.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a lull and nobody's really pushing boundaries too, but
yeah. Well, and I feel like most of the public just, flips through and doesn't get it, right? They don't understand what they're seeing some of the most creative you can possibly be in this world. And they're just, they don't care, right? They just go back to their lives and that's it. And it's like, no, you were just exposed to something.
I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
Like, who's doing this?
Fantastic.
This is another. Okay. So, well, let's finish San Francisco. So San Francisco, you're going to school, but you're partying again. Same thing. Do you hit a kind of an end to my health and my ability to party are conflicting?
Yeah, health was getting really bad. Brain was getting super mushy. I remember going on a bartending interview, and the woman just like asked me a couple questions. I think we got through 2 questions, and she just kind of started shaking her head. She's like, "Yeah, no," and I was like, I agree with you. Let me just leave because I just could not. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing well, am I? And it was just mushy, and I started breaking down a lot, and I went and did some hypnotherapy with this woman, which super skeptical, and she was referring books to me, and we were doing these sessions, and like, it took me a couple of times before I actually went to visit her, and she would call me and you'd be like, hey, you missed your session today, And so it was this weird moment of me trying to find my way out, because I feel like I'd found something that made me feel better about the past, but then I went too hard in it. And now I'm trying to find my way out of that because it was just medicating. It was like, hey, I feel good, so I don't have to think about this over here or deal with life. And I remember she called me one day and she goes, you've missed, this is the third time you've missed your session. And so we started talking, and I was laying in bed on my side, and she's like, why don't you want to be better? Why don't you want to, work your way through this? And we're talking and talking, and the next thing I know, I'm just bawling, just in tears, like a little kid, just letting it out. And she's like, basically having a go at me.
This happened before?
No, never.
It's the first time. It's like a flood.
First time, just a flood. And as I'm laying there, and I was like, okay, I can never miss this again. So we get off the phone, and I pick up my head, and there's just blood all over my pillow. And I had cried so hard that it just, like, my nose had just started bleeding, and I thought it was just tears, but it was just, my body was just like letting it out, and it was a mess. And I was like, it kind of scared me a little bit. I was like, yeah, it's time. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take. It's time to start crawling out of this. So I would do sessions with her. I would start picking up books that I thought would help, and, kind of.
What was the ratio of hypnosis to the actual therapy?
The hypnosis was the majority of it. So she would sit and talk to you for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you would sit back, and it wasn't like you didn't know what was going on. Like, I could hear people walking down the hall, right? But I had all these weird visuals and all these crazy things, and she would just tell me what's happening, do this, do that. And I was just like, and I would leave there enlightened, and that's, I think, the turning point.
So she was engaging your unconscious,
yeah,
a little bit,
yeah. And we worked through.
Can we get him a fresh drink?
Thank you.
So you would work through.
Yeah. So we worked through a lot of the childhood stuff. We worked through a lot of the just doing drug stuff and why, and at the time I didn't realize that this related to that, and that it was, you're covering up, and all the while I'm trying to create art and trying to be a photographer, because it was, really my childhood dream to be a photographer, because I was a photographer in high school. And, so being out of the military, in school, struggling to find my balance and my thing, not my dad's thing, my thing. And it was good. And it was a lot of years of scratching and climbing back out of that, So, but that was, and she's the one that actually, referred this book to me.
So when she recommended the book, what was the context?
She just said, you should read this book. And that was it.
Had she recommended other books?
No.
This is the first time she's like, hey, you should read this book.
And it was early on, right? And so I was like, oh, okay.
Did she give it to you, or did you have to go get it?
No, I went and got it.
So where'd you go to get it?
There's that giant bookstore in San Francisco, and I forget where it's at. It's kind of in North Beach, like the Italian kind of area of San Francisco. And I figured they had everything, right? Because it was just this giant bookstore that was spanned a city block. I wish I could remember the name of it. And I went in there and just asked for it, and they had an old ragged copy of it. And I was like, okay, cool.
So then you go home?
I go home.
Do you start reading right away?
No, I think it sat there for like a week or so.
Oh, okay.
because it was thick.
So you're a little intimidated?
It was thick. Like the paperback looks like this. And I'm like,
well, the hardcover looks like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's
substantial.
And I liked reading up to that point. I had read a lot of, The Alchemist, just different things like that. I enjoyed reading fantasy, when I was younger. So I was like, oh, let me try reading some fantasy and, because maybe that would help create some sort of art in me to then put out. And then I finally picked this up and just, I would go to Union Square and sit and read, or I would go, outside and sit and read, or sit and read at home. And it took me a long time to get through it.
Do you remember the first kind of takeaway where you're like, oh, okay, I understand why she recommended it?
It was about just like being honest and being pure and just like, hey, you have it within you, whatever it is, right? You don't have to, because I always felt, and I think I explained this to her, I'm like, I'm looking for something, whether it's in photography school or in these drugs or in a relationship or something. And it occurred to me that it's whatever you're looking for is already there. You have it inside of you. You don't have to go looking for it. You just have to kind of decide what it is and follow it.
Do you understand why we go looking for it externally?
100%.
What is it?
Because I think that when you're a kid, you're so dependent on your parents to keep you alive, right? And to give you guidance and to give you love and to give you all the things. And we're selfish as kids because we just want love, right? Validation. And so you're used to reaching out to the parent to get that. And if you don't have strong parents who have already done whatever work they need to do and say, hey, look, you can find what you need inside of you, you don't even know to start looking there. You don't even know. And then if you, are heavy into drugs or, trying to find something outside, that you just keep looking there everywhere, until you find something that's like, hey, by the way, it's just here, right? You don't need anything. You shouldn't want anything except to be the best that you can be.
So, in that moment though, where you're figuring that out, and I mean, tell me your experience, but a common experience, or maybe my experience, is the hardest part of that is being quiet.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the partying and the action and for me, it wasn't drugs, it was work.
Yeah.
So you get addicted to work because as soon as you stop, you're alone with yourself.
Right.
And so how did you navigate the stopping and then you're alone with yourself? Because doesn't that come before the realization that it's in you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the realization of it's in you comes until, I don't think it's an immediate thing. I think it's you got to hear it and you got to stay quiet with yourself and you have to learn to be okay by yourself and you have to, and it just takes years to get through that process, to the point where it's never ending almost, until you're dead.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
So what happens in the book that helps you along that journey?
So I finished the book, which took probably a year, right? And I started to realize you're not stronger than your environment. You're not stronger than, especially, in a potentially weakened state. If all your friends are drug dealers, you're going to do drugs. If all your friends are out partying, you're gonna go out and party. So
Form equals function.
exactly. And you're not stronger than that until you do something about it, right? Which you can't, if you're out partying every night, you're going to not just, it's your habits and all the things that you've already created that are going to continue. So I realized I needed a shift and a change, and I needed to have a moment that I could then work from. So moved to LA.
And that was the moment?
That was my moment. And I built it up as that was the moment.
And so there's an intentionality injected into the move.
Yep.
Of I'm now going to live by these different beliefs in a sense.
Exactly.
And what were those beliefs?
Work hard, create art, be in the photography world, come to LA. The San Francisco was San Francisco. It's the party city for me. LA is going to be the work city. It's going to be the healthy city. It's going to be the city that I make it, whatever that means, at the time.
It is very interesting to me because I think about this all the time as intention creates outcome and context. Because I moved to LA and I worked. Yeah. I had a lot of friends that moved to LA and they partied and died. And so your intention, like I could move to San Francisco and work and not party. Yeah. It's just, you'll find what it is you're looking for.
Well, and it could have been anywhere, right? And New York was actually on and I was like, for a split second, I was like, maybe I moved to New York. Nah, that's a bad idea, But LA, I was like, let's move to LA. LA is fashion. LA is photography. There's tons of photographers in LA that I can go and work for and kick this off and get started and start from the bottom and just claw my way out. And I'm going to be better and I'm going to be good and I'm going to be, and obviously, it's LA, right? You still party a little bit, but it's different. It's not, it's not the same. And you work more and you do more and you start to, get your bones and start to get up into what you decide you want to be.
Well, LA and New York are kind of the center of the creative arts.
Right.
Whether it's fashion, photography, TV, movies, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Publishing.
I love New York. It scares me though.
I love New York too.
I love New York.
I'd love to have an apartment there.
Oh yeah. It's an amazing place.
I used to have a friend who had an apartment there and I would use it.
Yeah.
And I could take my dogs.
Oh.
She was in meatpacking district. So fun.
So much fun.
But it's New York.
Yeah, but it's
no joke.
It's New York is
completely different energy.
Yeah. Well, and I think what scared me about New York is I knew that San Francisco was mild compared to what I would probably be like in New York. And proven by the handful of times that I went there that 24 hours of staying up and partying, I was like, okay, I could never live here, but being in LA was about work and work kept you tired. So you weren't doing, and I think if you can manage yourself in a certain aspect, wear yourself out. So you're just doing this instead of that, you can get to a place that's much better. And it's funny, like I remember clearly that my brain was just cloudy and foggy and mushy and just, I couldn't form sentences.
You were numb.
It just, for years. And I look and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm just going to be like this, if this is just me now. And then finally the fog started clearing and I started, being healthier and doing healthier things and surrounding myself by healthier people. And
so, I mean, what you're describing is a complete reinvention.
Complete reinvention. And it was not easy. It was not easy because, as you know, in the art and fashion world, everybody's partying, everybody's doing drugs, but I was just trying to wean myself off of that, you know?
Why wouldn't I don't know that I would say that, because I think there's always like those odd ducks that have their own world
Yeah.
where they're doing something so unique and on their own terms
Yeah.
that they're not partying. They're just, I mean, I kind of think I've created my own little Narnia here that's like that, where it's like,
well, this is amazing.
Everybody's doing their thing, but I'm
Yeah.
doing my own thing
Yeah.
in my own way.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Which I think is what everybody wants deeply. They want something like this, their own thing and just to be so clean and pure about it and just not, and that is what I took from this is there's the world where you can have fame and fortune, right? Based on somebody else telling you, or there's, I don't give an F, right? I'm just going to do my thing and make it my thing and make it wonderful and great for me. And if you really do it that way, it turns out that everybody loves it because everybody wants. It's more honest. And
has a different energy.
People want to be honest. They just don't know how. They don't.
But you, by default, become the leader.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is looking for somebody to say the thing that everybody's thinking.
Yeah. And to look to somebody that doesn't compromise and just says, hey, because it seems easy. I look at you and this seems easy for you, right? I'm sure it wasn't, but I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have that. This looks so easy and wonderful and peaceful and calm and just delightful every day, and to come through, iterations of chaos, to come to a place where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to do my thing. This stuff never goes away, and that's okay. I'm just going to do my thing and be happy about it.
Yeah. No, I think you described it perfectly, because that thing is an expectation. And so if you expect it to be easy, well, they say in a 20-year study, the key to happiness, believe it or not, is low expectations. Like the one thing you can control is your expectations. So if you think of whenever you've been upset or miserable with somebody, it was an unmet expectation.
Right.
And so you can control that. It's actually something that we have agency over, right?
Right.
And so I've resolved myself to the fact that it's hard.
Yeah.
And so people on the outside think that it's easy, but I've resolved myself to it's work, and I'm going to work, and that's it.
And I think that's what makes it easy, look easy, is when you work and you just resolve yourself to be like, hey, this is how it is. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the hardships of getting to what I want to do. People look at that and go, why does he enjoy it being hard? Why is it not that difficulty not blocking him?
Because the outcome is freedom.
Exactly.
And freedom means a lot to me.
It's everything. Real freedom.
And I'm a boss.
Yeah. It's perfection. I'll
work really hard for that.
Nobody's going to outwork us.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't even learn that until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Because after, doing photography for 18 years in LA, trying to find something else that actually paid real money. It was a financial planner. Can you imagine me as a financial planner? Photography as an artist, financial planner. Made zero money. Came into real estate, and I was just like, oh, I can be creative again. I can enjoy my life again. I can be free because it's hard and not worry about all the stuff. Because it's hard. It's not easy, so.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see somebody like you doing this and making the difficult look easy, even though we all know it's just not, and just embracing it,
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Okay. So how did The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand change your life?
So it gave us two main characters. And one character was unreasonably uncompromising, right? Howard. Just, no, I'm going to do this. I don't care if you like it or not. I don't care, right? It's perfect in every form and every way, and I don't care. And that's impossible to do. It's impossible as a real human on this planet to just be like, I don't care what you think. I don't care what this other person thinks. I don't care what the person thinks that's paying me to do the thing. I don't care. I'm going to do the thing. It's going to be done my way. Just too much fear inside of us. Am I doing it right? Will you like it? Will these people like it? You know? So to have that as a guide of, if you can somehow get close to that, life's happy.
And the other character in the book is a pleaser.
Is the ultimate people pleaser, was zero talent, in fact, he goes to our character Howard and he's just like, I can't do this. Can you do this? And can I put my name on it? And of course he lets him, right? And he goes through this fame and fortune to then just die out again because he's not the flavor of the month, right? Because, you know, oh, we as the world have used you up and you're done. But you can't use this other person up because he doesn't allow you to use him up. Nobody's going to use you up because you're doing your own thing the way you want to. And nobody gets to determine, you know, how Chris builds his library. It just is perfection according to one person. And who gives a shit what anybody else thinks?
So in a sense, he's externalizing his validation to the approval of others versus approving yourself.
Yeah.
Is that the underlying message?
And it's as simple as that. And the most difficult thing ever to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Near impossible.
We're sitting here talking about it casually.
Yeah.
But years.
Yeah,
for me too. Like years and doubt and like.
Yeah.
And bad advice and good advice and then bad advice and.
Yeah. And some great advice that you don't take. And you should go this way. And yeah.
Yeah. What's your relationship to ecstasy and mushrooms and that sort of stuff?
You know, I don't really do much of it, you know, and I think it's because I know it's fun, you know, but it's the clarity of mind that I'm after now. Like how, you know, and I could always be more healthy. I could go to the gym and I could, you know, not drink but it's waking up in the morning. I turn 50 next month, which is mind-blowing for me because I feel like I'm 22.
So you're February?
Yeah. And
what sign does that make you?
Pisces.
Pisces?
Yeah. What about you?
Capricorn.
Okay.
I'm coming up 53.
Okay. So we're still young. I like it.
Just not.
It's babies.
Feels like
it does.
2024 went boom.
Gone.
It'll be summer.
Yeah. Before you know it. We'll be celebrating New Year's next week of 2026.
I don't know how to slow it down.
You can't.
If you're out in space.
Yeah.
Time slows down.
Yeah. I love it.
Elon's got the right idea.
Hurry up, Elon. Figure it out. Slow it down. Make us younger.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a lot of business. My wife would call them self-help, but it's there's a book that is my Bible right now. It's called Never Split the Difference. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's magic because it's all about, for me, in the place that I'm in my life, it's about communication. And if I can be the best communicator for me, then I can help people, because I do love helping people. But I need to be the best person for me before I can help anybody. So if I can really communicate in whatever manner needs to be communicated, then I can help the person in front of me get what they need. But without me being the best, you know, or at least striving to be the best, I'm not, you know. So it's that tactical empathy of understanding what a person truly wants, not what they're telling you, but what they truly want. And, you know, helping them find a way too. but it's really about just me learning to be the best communicator I can, which I have a long ways to go. So,
really, I don't get that sense. You seem very empathetic.
Thank you. I try.
Are you not empathetic?
No, yeah.
I mean, if you go through what you went through, you're kind of an empath to begin with, right?
Yeah.
The only thing you need is boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do sometimes.
As you get older.
Yeah.
Who has time?
Yeah.
Who has time for nonsense?
Yeah. It's funny being in, having my experience in photography and dealing with models, photographers, stage, production, things like that. I look back at myself and I was like, wow, I was very emotional and reacted emotionally. And now I'm dealing with people and, millions of dollars worth of exchanging property and stuff. And I find myself getting emotional and then just going, no. Remember, we don't do that. Be in their world. Think about what they're really struggling with. Communicate that and be empathetic. And it's a really good switch. It's like almost
what is that real conversation in your head like when you catch yourself doing something? Yeah. What do you really say to yourself?
If I'm being totally honest,
yeah,
it's this person has no idea what they're doing. And I was there once. And don't be frustrated with them, right? Just be a good communicator. Because I can't make decisions for people. They have to make their own decisions. But without the right information, they're not capable. And a lot of times they're not capable anyway, because they're emotional like I once was.
You're so much nicer to yourself than I am.
I've trust me, I've beat myself up.
Hey, stop doing that.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that.
It didn't work last time.
Yeah.
Why would you think it's going to work now? Stop.
Quit being a jerk to yourself. Yeah.
That's funny.
But
so I fixed businesses for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of my really career, basically. And the idea of leadership, comes up. People write leadership books, whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing that I realized is most of these people, even if they're entrepreneurs or whatever, they're managers, they're not leaders.
Right.
They're fumbling through a system somebody else created.
Right.
They have huge egos.
Yep.
But they're not changing the world.
No.
They're barely surviving, but they, because it's so easy to make money, you get this false sense of what a leader is and that sort of thing. So I've always been fascinated with leadership and, just human behavior in a sense. And all of the leadership stuff, to me, always treated a symptom. Like, leaders eat last. It's like, well, that's about you. That's not because there's times when a leader should eat first and everybody should stand. Like, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
And the courage that it takes to be a leader and stand up, is very rare and uncommon.
Yeah.
I mean, real leaders are 1 in a million.
1 in a million. And I feel like if you're good at a thing, doesn't mean you're going to be a good leader.
No.
At all.
And you should probably just be good at a thing.
Just be good at a thing.
Have your magic and do the thing.
Don't try to be a leader.
Yeah. And so I've always found it very disingenuine. Yeah. So it took me a while to write this book, but I wrote a leadership book that is arguably, in my opinion, and many other people will say, the best leadership book.
Oh, nice.
Currently, maybe people say it's the only leadership book you'll ever need, but it's 2 books. So it's I Am, so it's you.
Yeah.
Because you know how they say money doesn't change people, it just amplifies who
they are, right?
You can't be a leader if you don't have a certain agency, a certain charisma, a certain ability to communicate,
right?
An oration. There's a lot of things that it takes to be a leader. So you have to deal with the me, the I Am. Then the second book is Leader.
Right.
But this is irrelevant if you can't get
through that. Yeah.
And so I would be curious. So I have it for you.
Oh, sweet.
It's 12 pounds.
I love it.
So you're going to work out. But it's I Am Leader.
Wow.
And it's an experience. So it's, also part of the influence of the library here is this isn't just words and 60,000 words between two covers.
Yeah.
There's a tempo to it. There's pictures. It's meant for you to kind of stop and think.
Yeah. This is amazing. Thank you.
And it's very personal.
Okay.
Like, it's for the individual. It's not for the crowd.
This is spectacular.
You'll see the influence of the library in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. One of the books I was listening to or reading, it's like, what would you pay for, a piece of paper? Nothing, right? Here's a piece of paper. What would you pay for a piece of paper with some words on it? Not much more. But what would you pay for several pieces of paper with like the best knowledge that you could ever get? Well, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money that you could pay. So thank you. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Oh, I will. It comes at an interesting time. I've been trying to build a bit of a team and figure out how to be a good leader and whatnot. So this is,
the thing too about Split the Difference, if I could just maybe give you something to think about.
Yeah.
Is, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
To be a leader, you have to be okay with not having any of those.
Right.
So if you need food and shelter, you're going to be the follower to whoever gives you food and shelter.
Right.
If you need validation, you're going to be the follower to whoever's giving you validation. So if you just think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and it's expectation in a way, you have to disconnect yourself from the need for external validation or approval
or anything
in the service of the mission.
Right.
And to be a leader, you got to have a mission.
Yeah. And it's funny. I go back to Howard in this book, and he just, without question, and I know it's fiction, but it's like, if you could just set that as the standard, not needing anything genuinely, which is, we're all human, it's almost impossible. But if you could set that as standard and strive towards that, that's where being a good leader would be, is, people are just going to go, oh, I'm inspired by it and let me follow it and let me do it. And you're just focused on, being that, that perfect thing, even though you can't, but you strive towards it. So.
Well, anytime you want to come back and hang out in the library, would love your feedback.
I'll be here every day.
You're more than welcome.
This is amazing. Chatting with you is amazing.
You see these stacks here?
Yeah.
So this is, I don't know if you're familiar with